So I would like to start with this quote by Tennessee Williams. You can be young without money, but can't be old without it. And I think that is rings true, right? Because when we tend to be young, we always think there's no end to our life, that we can always do something tomorrow, and we always max out what we earn, and we probably go into debt very quickly. And I still remember when my daughter, when she finished high school, and the bank straight away sent her a credit card for $5,000 credit, right? She didn't even apply for it. She just got it on the post, and she was so excited, right? So my late wife, she asked her to bring the card over to her, and she took the card and she cut it right in front of her, cut it into two. And my daughter got so shocked. She said, "How can you do that, mom?" But she said, "Can you afford to pay this debt if you borrow? You're still in school. You're just finishing high school. You got to go to university. Can what have we thought about you about not being in debt?" She said, "Yes, mom, you're right." And so that's how she learned a very valuable lesson, that we got to live within our means. And the same thing happened to my son a year later. When he finished his high school, he got a card, and he was smart this time. He didn't even have to bring it to us. He just took the card and just cut it off in front of us. So we are very blessed that our children have learned to live within what they have and not get into bondage. So again, as I said, we need to be understand that we, as what Naresh said, we have a window of 30 to 40 years to create wealth. And what Naresh said earlier, again, I explained that in a minute here. This slide shows about what is the retirement income you need in Australia. I know it's not different, much different. If you convert that into US dollars, it is not far off. If this is assuming you've already paid off your mortgages and you're not in debt. You need minimum of $37,000 minimum just to get by. But really to be comfortable, you need at least 50,000. These are all tax-free net income in Australia for a couple or a single. In India, about 90,000. And so I was doing recently looking at a survey in the US. US, most of the people are going into retirement. They feel they need 1.7 million US dollars to retire comfortably, because even though the retirement age is 65, but we know that we're going to live at least another 30-40 years. So the secret is now, how do I maintain my capital, preserve my capital, and I live on the profits of the income? So we need to learn to preserve our capital and live on the income that we get from the investments that we make. That's the strategy that we need to work towards. That's what we teach you here. How do you learn to create wealth as early as possible? And then how do you use that wealth to be able to live a life that God wants you to live, to be a blessing to others while you're taking care of yourself and your spouse, whatever your condition might be. So this is an example of what we need to be aware of. Unfortunately, our parents didn't teach us much about it, because they were not they were ignorant about wealth creation. But thank God that we are in a position now to teach you, and so that it's not too late. So our money should be like an ATM. I always like to put the picture of an ATM. So whenever you need it, you just press the button, the money pops out, whether it's $100, $200, whatever you want. But don't forget, it's your money. It's not coming from somebody else's money, right? So you need to have savings, sufficient savings or whatever wealth to be able to generate that income. So money can only be generated from wealth. There's a difference between money and wealth, right? Money is a world system that we use to buy and sell. It's a means of exchanging what we need. But that comes from the wealth that we have. So we use the wealth to generate the money that we need to use. So it's about wealth creation that is important. So it's not just having liquid money, keeping money under your pillow and trying to use that is not going to help, because inflation is the biggest enemy. Inflation is going to eat your money. So you need to make sure your income that you're generating is higher than your inflation and cost of living and so on. So that's what it is. So basically, this is what I'm saying. So this is your wealth. So this is unlimited supply that's coming in from the back of the ATM, and whenever you need. So this is where the secret is: managing your wealth. How do you manage my wealth? How do I preserve my capital? And how do I use that capital to make a living, perpetual income? So that's the key thing. That's what God wants us to do. And then, it's only through good stewardship. So I'm not going to talk about stewardship because Naresh has briefly talked about good stewardship from the parable of the talents, and from so I'm not going to spend time on that. So that's key. The key thing is good stewardship. If you don't know how to manage what God put in your hand, then you cannot blame anybody but yourself. Okay, now the key thing is, again, wealth creation is what Naresh showed you. He talked about the inflow, your how do you outflow and residue. So I put it as what I call it the golden buckets. So the well represents your income. So this can be your salary, could be a business, could be passive income. In fact, that should be multiple wells. You need multiple wells to be able to create wealth. You cannot just live on your salary alone. Salary is it's not going. Salary is what is a job. Job. Job stands for just above broke. So salary just gives you just above broke, and you cannot live on that, because suddenly when you come to retirement, it's going to be like a big waterfall. Then you're going to suddenly decline rapidly. So you cannot. So the secret is, how do I plug the spending, minimize my spending, and how do I maximize savings and investment? Savings and investment is two different things. All right, this is what we will talk in the future. The next training, if you want to jump into our training, we'll teach you what this means and how to organize your savings and investing so that you are in a position to be able to create wealth. When you're young, you can put more and more money into investing, because investment has risk. And then as you grow older, some of these investments get moved into savings, because there's more security you invest in most investments that it guarantees your capital. So this is a model that we teach you as we go along. So what I call the blueprint. So this is what this is how the model that you use to create wealth, right? So wealth is a mindset. It's a habit that needs to be developed. It's not it's not something that you're born with. Everybody, God gives us wisdom. That's why I love some of the scriptures in the Bible, where God says Solomon asked for wisdom, and God was so pleased with wisdom that he gave him also wealth. He became the richest man on earth, even by today's standard. So we need wisdom. That is why if you look at my screen, my backdrop, it says plan wisely, plan your future wisely. That means we need wisdom to plan our future. And that's what it's all about. So you need to build. What we're teaching here is how to build a mindset, a wealth creating mindset in line with the Word of God, so that you can now prosper according to what God's promises. Because there are so many scriptures. There are more than 2,300 scriptures in the Bible to talk about money. Even Jesus spent 15% of his recorded time on the Bible talking about money. So why is money important to God? Because it's about a person's character. So if your character, you don't know how to handle money, if you're not a good steward, then God cannot bless you with more. One of the things I teach is God loves every human being, because whether you're a believer or not, it doesn't matter. But he doesn't trust everybody, right? Only when he learns to trust you, he can give you more. So it's about building that mindset and being a good steward as we go along with whatever we have, and then we multiply. That's when God is going to give you more and more, and he's going to give you wisdom how to multiply the wealth that you have. So it's basically about changing our identity, because especially if you're a believer, God says we are his children, and Jesus also talks about it, that we are not only his children, but we are also his friend. So we don't want to go about begging to God. He doesn't want us to go begging to him like a servant or a slave. So he wants us to go to him like a son, as a daughter to him, but when we do it according to his will, then we are going to him as a son or a daughter, and then he will open the doors and opportunities to us. So it's our identity, our mindset that is important. Right. The second thing is our priority. God says, seek first my kingdom and his righteousness, and I will add everything to you. Everything that we need in life. He gives us. I think there's 3 John. There's also talks about prospering our soul as we prosper in everything. So basically, we need to have a right attitude, right mindset. Our priority must be right. It is not looking into the spirit of mammon, because the moment you put a priority on money, then you're moving away from a priority in God, trusting in God. So what happens is, when you get your identity right and your priority right, you will have the opportunity now to build capacity in your life. You start growing, which automatically God will start giving you more and more as you steward the wealth properly. So this is what it's all about. It's about our identity, our priority, which will then change our mind to be where God wants us to be. But it's about, again, it's about learning. We can give you all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it, how to transform yourself and apply it, then it means nothing. Right? It's about starting in small steps. It's about, I say repetition leads to mastery. I repeat, repetition leads to mastery. So we start practicing, each day, and then suddenly we become masters in this, in anything we want in life. And this is one of them. Right? So what is the biggest risk in investment of wealth creation? Right? I'm not going to ask for question open. I'm just going to make it, I'm going to give the answer to you straight away. Right? Not investing at all. The biggest risk is doing nothing. Right? If you do zero, you get nothing. You multiply 0 by 0, you get 0. Right? So you must start investing in something. You must take a risk, and it's about calculated risk. And even if it fails, it doesn't matter. That is why we teach you about spreading your investments into different baskets, so that even if one investment fails, you're not lost. You still have the others to flourish. Right? Every investment has risk, but it's about how do you manage it, how do I build on it, and this is some of the things that we'll teach you about what sort of return on investment you need based on different investments you make, so that you're hitting the goal or the target that you're looking for. Right? So it's about having the right set of beliefs. Most have fear-based beliefs about money. Money, we feel that we must hoard money, we must save money, we must keep as much as we can. Excuse me. And when you do hoarding, then you're doing the opposite. You should be more generous with whatever you have. God says the more you sow, the more you reap, until the point where you will now be reaping where you're not even sowing. And like for Ruben and myself and for Naresh, we are coming to a point where even we are reaping where we are not sowing. Right? And because we are not now dependent on time is no longer controlling us. Right? We are now controlling the outcome that we want. And that's what is important. That's what we're going to teach you. Right? So we have been, given the wrong set of beliefs by our parents, because most of our parents came from a very poor background. Like my parents were laborers in a rubber plantation in Malaysia. Right? So I know they couldn't even afford to send me to university or higher education after my high school. So I had to borrow money and, from a union, go to UK to do my studies. And then, I worked my way up. But what I'm trying to say is that parents, they are one of the biggest influences in our life. Education, the education system trains us to be employees. They teach you how to be an employee. They groom you to be employees, not to be entrepreneurs. They don't teach you about finances or wealth management. Some of the people that we mix with also can influence our lifestyle. If we mix with people who are always spending and they're not saving, we will have the same mindset. But if you start believing and mixing with people who are wealth creating mindset, then you will change and you will grow as well. So these are some of the examples that I can think about why people are not successful in wealth creation. And of course, the most important thing is fear of failure, because in life we can fail in any aspect of our life, but failure should not stop us. It's a stepping stone for us to learn what not to do. And of course, the poverty mindset, that's the biggest risk that we have. God in Bible never teaches about living in poverty. Like Deuteronomy 8:18 says, God says, it is I who gives you the power to create wealth. So God has already given us the power to create wealth. It's about how we learn. We need the wisdom how to tap into that wealth and create wealth for ourselves, our families, and be a blessing for His kingdom. And that's what it's all about. Okay. So ignorance of opportunity, there are hundreds and hundreds of opportunities out there to create wealth. But many people are ignorant of it because they're scared. They think it's too difficult, too complex. But actually, when you start learning about these things, this is where we teach you again about how to identify which opportunities, what type of investment, what is low risk, what is high risk, what is medium risk, and how do you mitigate these risks so that you learn to build some confidence in yourself and you start creating wealth step by step. So there are some of the common mistakes that people make, like some of the things that Naresh talked about, buying expensive things that you can't afford. A lot of people spend money buying things that they can't afford, especially depreciating assets. You go and buy brand new cars. If you're an employee, not a businessman, why would you want to buy a brand new car? Because the moment you get the keys in the showroom and you sit in the car, you drive out, you've lost 20% of the market value of that car, right? But if you buy a 3-year-old car, that is probably worth about 25% less or 30% less than the new car. And that money that you save, you can put into investment or you can use to pay off your mortgage or your debts. So don't be motivated by what you see among your friends doing, but we need to be wise. Even like phones, people queue up to buy brand new phones when Apple or Samsung, anybody launches. It's why do you need to do that? Because most phones can last you at least 4 to 5 years because you only use less than 20% of the capability of the phone. So look at not spending money on unnecessary things, especially on depreciating assets, right? Make sure it lasts as long as possible. Don't live from paycheck to paycheck, because this is where it's what Naresh said. If you don't know how to manage your inflow and create residue, you're going to be forever living in bondage. You don't have that residue to be able to save. So again, we teach you how to do that, not to avoid the situation. And many people, they do not have a budget. They simply have no clue what they're buying or they're selling or spending on. And when they suddenly come end of the month, they suddenly find themselves in a debt. They're overexposed, overspent. So you need to have a financial plan, a budget. I have a monthly budget. I know exactly what I'm spending each day. And end of each month, I check my budget against my expenses to see whether I'm still in line with my budget, or if I've exceeded, what have I exceeded, why and why. So you should not get into temptation when you go to the supermarket. There are so many temptations to shopping centers to buy. Unless it's necessary, don't buy. I don't say you live in poverty, but you live a comfortable lifestyle, but live as a good steward, buying what is necessary and maximize your savings and minimize your spending. Don't become a real spender. As I say, if you don't use your credit card to show off to your neighbors that you have money, right? This is what I call the Parkinson law. Parkinson law, this is not Parkinson disease. Parkinson law is where the more you earn, the more you spend. It's a bad habit, right? So the more you earn, your spending should not increase and much more, right? So you should be saving more. So this is one of the problems that people face. Abusing credit card facilities, one of the things that Naresh talked about. If you're going to spend 20%, 25% on credit card, paying minimum, you're going to pay exorbitant amount of money unnecessarily. So if you leave, I have 2 credit cards, but the moment I get my statement, I pay off 100%. I just don't pay the minimum. So I use the credit card as a convenience, not as a necessity. So that I don't, so if I spend, let's say, $1,000 a month in my credit card, I have that $1,000 in my bank account, but I don't use it until the statement comes in. So that's $1,000. Even if the bank gives me a miserable 1%, that is still a 1% income that I get for that $1,000, and I'm still saving money while I'm getting interest. I'm also using the credit card wisely, and I know I can pay it off. So things of that nature is so don't get yourself caught into this debt rat race. You get into big problem, and you must have a long-term financial plan. What is your goal? God says, I'm the Alpha and the Omega. I'm the end from the beginning. So you need to know what you need in 10, 20 years time, or 50 years, 30 years time, or when you're 50, 60 years, and then you need to plan backwards. Okay, where am I now? How do I work forward towards what I need to my goals? And this is some of the strategies that we will talk about as well. So I want to talk about the 7 types of income that produces wealth. I'm going to go through that briefly. Number 1 is earned income. Earned income, it can be anything like a job. It can be in business, whatever it is that gives you a salary or an income, fixed monthly income. That is profit income. Profit income is where if you sell something, if you're a business, you're making a profit, or if you can be through investment, a cash flow investment where it gives you a profit, right? Interest income, we know what is interest. If you put your money in a bank or a savings, or it gives you an interest, regular interest, or even if it is look like if you put in treasury bonds, they give you what they call it coupon, right? And there is dividend income, especially from shares. If you buy shares and you hold it, some of those shares will give you dividends. Dividend can also be from a business. If you have equity in a business, they give it, the business makes profit, they will also give you dividends. Then is rental income, is more from real estate. If you have investment properties, they will give you rental income. Capital gains income, where if you sell a property, or if you sell something that appreciates in value, and then you make that profit, then obviously that's what we call capital gains income. And then obviously royalty income. Royalty income is where, for example, if you write a book, you publish books, or you have you're putting an online training program or whatever. It's you create it once, and it continues to give you income. If you have if you got some sort of copyright, so people will have to pay for it. So this is something that is going to give you recurring income on. So these are some of the types of income opportunities that you have to create wealth. Now, why do you need to diversify? Diversify your investments, so that if you lose in one, you have the others, right? So that is basically like buying insurance, so that anything can. Recently now with COVID, for example, if you look at the stock market, it's like a yo-yo. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So you cannot plan wisely what your investments, your income. So you need to say, okay, where else can I diversify that gives me more stability? So these are some of the things that we need to look at very strategically. This is an example. I'm just, one of the wonders of wealth creation is compounding. Einstein says compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. So I'm going to use an example here, a simple example. If you just invest $1,000, that's all, nothing else. And if you say if you're investing in a product or an investment that gives you 30% return, you say, wow, 30% is high. Let me tell you, it is possible. There are products out there that give you 30% return. For example, Ruben, myself, we have invested in, it gives us 30% return, right? But it's only one of the different products that we invest in. So this is an example of a product, where you invest $1,000 and you get 30% return, right? So for the first year, you get $300 return. In year 10, that same $1,000 is producing $13,787. Basically, when I say compounding, that means you're not taking the profit out, you're reinvesting the profit. Okay, so that's, I say it's not a lot. Yes, it is. Initially, compounding it starts slow, it's linear, it starts slow, and then it starts escalating very quickly. So if you look at the subsequent years, so in 15 years, that 1,000 has become $51,000. In 20 years, it's become $189,000. In 30 years, it's become $2.6 million. The same $1,000 in 30 years has become $2.6 million. Now imagine if you put away 20, when you're 20 years old, if you've got a children 18 years old, right? And if you put $1,000 for that, right, in 30 years, when they're about 45, 46 years old, they're going to have $2 million in hand, cash, or investment. Again, it depends whether that particular investment is consistently producing 30%, and it is there all the time. So this is where you look at risk management. We teach you about risk management. How do you keep an eye on these investments so that you can watch over it and make sure that you can diversify or move it around, so when that happens. So this is just a simple example of compounding. So compounding is relevant in every wealth creation, whether you're putting in real estate, whether you're putting in bonds, or whether you're putting in stock market, whatever it is. That's how billionaires create wealth. That's how millionaires create wealth. That is how every human being is expected to create wealth, because in Genesis 1, God talks about multiplication. He's given us all authority and all power, and we are to multiply what God has given us. And that's about stewardship. So this is some example that we're talking about here. So I'm going to leave you with these 8 key areas that you need to strategically work on. Number one, plan, pay yourself first and start a habit of saving. That means don't say, I'm going to spend whatever I got left over is what I'm going to invest. No, it should be the other way around. Put aside, you say, okay, I'm going to consistently save 15% of my income, net income, and then I'm going to live on the 85%. So if you put away your savings and then you live on the balance, now you're being more strategic in your wealth management. So it should be the opposite. Save first, then spend on the rest. You might say, oh, I'm not enough. You'll be surprised how much you can live with what is left over, right? So that savings that you put aside is for your wealth creation. Of course, you got to take care of your, tithes and offerings and all that thing that we have to do. Okay, so save, then spend the rest. Manage your expenses by readjusting your lifestyle. One of the examples that Naresh talked about is how do I reduce that? Even if you can pay $100 extra, I can reduce my mortgage quickly. If I create a monthly expense budget, I only put down what I'm going to buy, what is my budget, that you will surprise how you can save money. There'll be a lot of subscriptions and things like that, small items that you're paying for that you're not even aware of. So once you create a budget, all these things will be exposed and you can start being more prudent with your expenses, right? Builds 3 to 6 months emergency fund in your savings. When COVID hit in March, the first thing that got impressed me was I was shocked at the number of people who don't have enough income, like what Naresh was showing. They were queuing at Centrelink in Australia for unemployment benefits. Even companies didn't have enough liquidity to sustain. And God reminded me of the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were prepared, 5 were not prepared, right? So God wants us to be prepared at all times. So this is why if you have emergency fund put away, right, even if anything happens to you, you're not panicking. You got time to think about it, reflect what to do while you still have the peace. I got enough money to survive for 3 to 6 months. What do I need to do? Ask God for plan, direction, what you can do. What are the actions I need to do? Right? Reduce debt fast. As Naresh told, I won't repeat this. We already explained why it is so important to reduce debt. Don't be a bondage, to the lender. We have to be lenders, not borrowers, not the other way around, right? We need to be lenders and not borrowers. Okay, invest periodically with long-term mentality. So everything we teach you is a long-term. Minimum we're looking at is about 7 years to produce wealth, right? So it is. So you, as Naresh, have got 30 to 40 years of lifespan. So what can we do on the long term? Progressively, like I give an example of compounding. You start with what you have, but if you invest wisely and reinvest, it compounds. That's how you create wealth over time. Right? Invest in passive incomes with acceptable return on investment. Again, we will teach you what are the different types of passive incomes that you have and what sort of return on investment you need to look at. And I'll talk about another. In the beginning, I talked about ATM, which is a cash machine. I'm going to talk about another ATM afterwards, another what I call an anti-time machine. ATM anti-time machine, because we are human beings, we are time dependent. We have only so much life, 30, 60, 40 years of our life to earn an income. So if you don't use that wisely, you're losing opportunity every day, every second. And again, as I said, it cannot be just living on one income. If you just say, I'm living on my salary, if the salary is paying you $30 an hour, in that 1 hour, you should also have other alternative incomes that's producing income for you. So your salary might be $30, but there are other passive income that might be producing $10, $15, $20 or $30 without you even putting an effort into it. So that's how you multiply. That's how you create wealth. Right? So beware negative of inflation. Inflation is a killer. If you keep your money in bank, if they pay you 1% interest, inflation typically in US, Australia is about 1.8 to 2%, right? So your money is going to go backwards. So if you put your money in safe in pillow, under your pillow, it's going to lose money every year. You're losing 2% of the value. Today, for example, in Australia, if I want to buy a sandwich, it costs me about $7, right? In 10 years, 5 years time, it might cost me $9. But if I don't save wisely, and if my return on income is not above inflation, I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to lose the purchasing power is going to go backwards. So these are some of the things that we need to be mindful of. These are some of the areas that will teach you how to overcome those risks. And finally, start now and let time do the compounding. So what I'm saying is that whether you're today 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, it doesn't matter. It's never too late. Never too late. You need to plan backwards. That means, what do I want to achieve by the time I retire, or 50 or 60? Then what am I now? Then I know how to plan backwards, forward. Okay, now what sort of return on investment do I need to make that kind of a wealth that I need to sustain myself when I retire? Remember the second chart I showed you about the retirement income you need in Australia. So these are the things you need to, and even in US, I know, depending on which state that you're living, the cost is, retirement expense. Hawaii is the most expensive. Hawaii, you need about $110,000 a year to live tax-free, right? So it is not, again, it's depending on which state you're living in. So same thing in Australia. If you're living in which city, it's not it's between the city and regional towns. Obviously, there's a little bit of difference, but not much. Whereas US has got more diversified, whereas in Australia it's a little bit more consistent across Australia. So you need to be aware of that as well. So let me just give you an example here. I'm just pulling the screen down. So is way to financial breakthrough? As I said, I talked about anti-time machine, right? Time is always against us, so we need to be able to see how can we multiply our wealth through multiple streams of income, right? Banks are now giving less and less interest rate. When, for example, when I came to Australia, the interest rate, if I put my money in term deposit, it was 8 to 10%. Today, they're giving 1%. In some countries, they're even paying negative. That means they take your money, So this is what you got to be mindful of. Wage increase is lower than inflation nowadays. Those days, at least, salary increase was much higher. Today, if you get 2%, you're lucky. You're fortunate, right? So this is why even your salary is going backwards, but your cost of living is increasing. For example, in Australia, if your salary increased 2%, for example, my electricity bill increases by 5% a year. My rates for the home, right, increases by 5%. So these are some of the things that you got to be mindful of, right? So how? It is through the power of compounding, right? And inflation beating gains for the long term. So this is basically what we need to do. And the longer you wait, the more you need to put aside. Okay, the longer you wait, the more you got to put aside. So this is basically my, my presentation. Very, very brief.